All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Breaking the Silence Around Men's Mental Health. My name is Aiden Samard. I'm the project lead for our collaboration with HeadsUpGuys, and I will be serving as your moderator this evening. Before we begin, I would just like to first acknowledge that we at Sigma Chi are hosting this webinar today on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. We at Sigma Chi are honored to be partnering with UBC's HeadsUpGuys to launch this amazing fundraising initiative in support of its life-saving online resources. We believe this fundraising campaign is an excellent opportunity to encourage help-seeking behavior for young men, especially during these challenging times we're facing with COVID-19. We're also excited to announce that an anonymous donor, a fellow UBC alumni and Kappa Sigma member, will be matching every dollar contributed to this fundraising initiative up to $50,000. We are incredibly grateful for their support. If you are interested in donating to our cause, please visit either UBC Crowdfunding or the HeadsUpGuys website. This event also wouldn't have been possible without the help from Manifest Wellness Canada, a Vancouver-based organization that help men develop the emotional tools they need to win at life more often. They take the best parts of coaching, counseling, and personal development to create practical, professional counseling that helps guys figure themselves out. Their counselors demystify mental health by helping clients understand what they need to do, how it will work, and what to expect, while tracking their progress and helping them succeed. Manifest has graciously donated close to $3,000 in counseling sessions to 2 lucky attendees of this webinar. To protect your privacy, we have decided to give these away anonymously. If you are interested in being entered, please contact Sigma Chi Breaking the Silence at gmail.com with your name and contact info. To learn more about their work or to try a free consultation, visit their website at manifest.me. We would like to start things off now by sharing a few words by our UBC president, Santa Ono.
Hello, I'm Santa Ono, President and Vice Chancellor of UBC. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the Sigma Chi Men's Mental Health Fundraiser for Heads Up Guys. Sigma Chi fraternity is among the largest social fraternities in North America, with more than 244 active chapters across the continent and 350,000 members. And I congratulate them for organizing this fundraiser. According to Statistics Canada, suicide is one of the leading causes of death among men, and the second leading cause of death for men under the age of 45. Unfortunately, young people are reluctant to seek help when they have mental health issues. They're ashamed, or they feel that others will judge them. That's why it's so important to have resources such as Heads Up Guys. On their website, you'll find tips, tools, success stories, and general information on dealing with depression and suicide. Heads Up Guys is a world leader in aiding men in the fight against depression. But it needs our help to do its job, which is why Sigma Chi is raising funds to help Heads Up Guys and to raise awareness of men's mental health on our campus and beyond. The good news is that all donations up to $50,000 will be matched by a very generous anonymous donor. So please, open up your hearts to this very worthwhile cause. Thank you.
We will now move on to Dr. John Agronichuck, who will discuss the story of Heads Up Guys. Dr. Agronichuck is a professor and director at the Psychotherapy program in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of British Columbia. As the director, he oversees the operations of North America's second largest medically based psychotherapy training program. John, I want to begin the conversation by asking you about the importance of men's mental health awareness and how Heads Up Guys came to be.
Well, thanks very much, Aidan. I really appreciate you putting this together. It's an important conversation for all of us to have. The backstory of Heads Up Guys started really a long time ago in a way. Through my clinical work and my research with men, I recognized that certain themes were emerging with men with regard to mental health in particular. And really one of the things that came through very clearly is that a lot of guys keep their mental health struggles hidden. And these are often due to culturally informed ideas about masculinity, what it is to be a man. And we've all heard it that, a guy has got to be strong, stoic, and successful. And because of this, a lot of guys feel that they ought to figure things out on their own and really don't like the idea of asking for help, that somehow that's a sign of weakness or failure. And so they end up harboring their pain in silence. And unfortunately, that keeps them disconnected from the help that could be available to them, whether that's in the form of connecting with friends or family or health professionals. In fact, there's reams of research pointing to men's low help-seeking rates, especially with regard to mental health help-seeking. And the unfortunate consequence of this is that problems, not surprisingly, become worse, more chronic. And ironically, there's a greater sense of embarrassment and shame if they do eventually reach out, feeling like a failure that they couldn't sort things out on their own. And sadly, because of this overwhelming shame, there's actually a lot of guys who actually never do reach out for a hand, feeling like that their pain is inescapable through any other way other than death. And as you heard Santa Ono talk, suicide is one of the leading causes of death amongst men, and for young men in particular, it is one of the top causes of death. So that's really frightening and something that we ought to take into consideration really seriously. And it's not even a Canadian phenomenon. This is really happening across the world. And in fact, there are some places in the world that the disparity between men and women with regard to suicide rates is much higher. So it really is a public health matter globally. And so we were confronted with these stark statistics, and it was clear that we needed to do something different as the status quo simply wasn't working. And there was a funding opportunity that came up to do something very different in the men's health space. And that's where the idea of Heads Up Guys started. That was about 7 years ago. And we wanted to make sure we use this opportunity to tackle depression in men, as this is a really major health issue and a leading cause of disease burden in the world, in and of itself, but it also provided us with an upstream approach to preventing suicide amongst men. So you tackle the depression and you can mitigate risk for suicide. And knowing that guys will usually turn first to the internet to seek help, health information, we figured we should meet them where they're at. And rather than trying to shape men to fit with what we currently had, instead meet them where they want to be. And so we wanted to create a space explicitly for men where they could get open and honest information about depression and suicide and access tips and the tools and the information about professional services and the stories of success that you heard Santa talk about. And to help guys feel like this was a space for them, we really put a lot of emphasis on utilizing, male-friendly aesthetics and imagery so that no guy would be embarrassed to have the site up on their screen if somebody walked by. It was clearly a guy's place. And we used plain language instead of a bunch of medical jargon and made sure to focus on positive, destigmatizing, and action-oriented communication. And that destigmatizing part is really important because a lot of guys have a lot of shame, as I mentioned, and a sense that, they can't let anybody know that they might be feeling this way because of all the negative perceptions associated with it. So one of our big jobs was to really debunk all these myths, the stigma around mental health. And again, designing it, easy navigation and layered information was really important to the design, so that even if you're feeling like crap and can't concentrate to read much, there'll be something useful that you can take away from your visit. And so it took some time to develop. It was a good couple of years of very hard work to pull it all together. And 5.5 years ago, we launched the site. And since then, we've had more than 2 million people come to the site, more than 60,000 every month. And these are people from all over the world, the majority being from Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom. And in fact, London, England is the city with the most traffic to the site. So we're getting it from all over. The United States is the country with the most traffic to our site. We've had more than 1 million social media engagements and 20 million people reached through our social media promotions and campaigns. We had more than 80 media features, 60 sites linking to us as a formal resource. So we're getting ourselves out there and being recognized as a reliable, valid resource. We've had over 250,000 guys complete our self-check, which is a screening tool for depression. And what we found is that more than 75% are actually screening for probable depression, and 13% are indicating that they have suicidal thoughts nearly every day. That means 1 in 13 people who come and fill this out are thinking of ending their life virtually every day. Now let that sink in, because that's a scary statistic. And so, as Santa mentioned, we operate exclusively by way of donations from the public. And so events like this and generous support of caring individuals, organizations like yours, companies, groups that recognize the importance of supporting men's mental health is really important. And, the matching opportunity he mentioned is really important, because it's an opportunity for us to potentially generate some serious funds to keep this life-saving resource going. And I don't use life-saving, that term, lightly. I really mean it. Every day we get messages from folks that come in, that have come to our resource and wanted to share the impact on them. And these messages are really, truly moving and revealing, with many sharing how HeadsUpGuys has helped them find hope even in their darkest moment. I've got an example of one here that it's really stuck to me. We've received it some time ago, but it's eloquent in its simplicity and powerful as well. And it simply read, I read your article on managing suicidal thoughts. Thank you. I'm pretty sure it saved my life. And we get these on a daily basis. And it's not just thanks, cool looking site or whatever, but thanks, this made a profound impact on my life. It gave me back my will to live. And so having these conversations over and over again, many times over, are so important, so that we start erasing the barriers to help when a guy needs it, and knowing where to look for help when you need it, which is a really important thing. So thanks again for putting this together. It means a lot.
Well, again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to, represent you guys, because, as a fraternity, we deal with a lot of, seeing a lot of the different types of masculinity and how people are feeling like they can't speak out. And when we came across your site, we were blown away, basically, by not only the way it was designed and the look of it all, but also the different stories that were on there. And just like you said, the different type of life-saving resources that are there. We were blown away, and we had to help. So we're happy.
I appreciate it.
Of course. I'm now going to open the panel today officially and talk about men's mental health, and bring awareness to the issues affecting not only members of our community, but men and women across the entire globe. Joining us today are Din Thomas, Eddy Hernandez, Conor Larock, Theo Fleury, Zach Abelson, and Niko Andrianos. So welcome to you all. I'd love to start first with Din Thomas. Din is a retired MMA fighter and is now a coach, mentor, and trainer for MMA fighters. He is also an actor and the new host of the MMA Tonight Show on Sirius Radio. Din, we'd love to hear from you today about your life, your career, and what led you to connect with Heads Up Guys.
Well, first off, I want to say thank you for everybody who's here, who's watching, and I'm incredibly honored and happy to be here. I'm not really sure how this happened, how I got here. It was a chain of events that kind of led me into this, but I'm extremely happy to be here and be able to talk about this. You know, like you said, I come from the martial arts world, the combat sports world, where we are supposed to be the toughest of the toughest. You know, we get in a cage and we beat each other up for money and the entertainment of other people. So like, we're supposed to be the toughest of the toughest. But I found that even with me, we're some of the most vulnerable, insecure people that you would meet. And we use violence in a way as an outlet to express ourselves, as opposed to being able to talk about it. Because we can't do that, because we're men, and we're not only just men, we're alpha men. We are the toughest of the toughest. So we have a problem, we fight about it. We punch, kick, try to hurt each other. And that's one of the reasons why I may have been attracted to this sport, for that reason, because I couldn't talk about my feelings as a man. So I had to fight about my feelings and use it and do it physically. But it catches up to you. It always catches up to you. It wasn't until 2 Novembers ago. Well, maybe I say this 2 summers ago. And I just saw myself spiraling downward, you know, whether it was from my personal life, my professional life. You just start spiraling downward. And as a man, you feel like you can't talk to nobody, because you're not supposed to. You're supposed to toughen up, be tough, be a man. And as the former UFC fighter, the coach I'm on top of so I'm the man that they're looking up to, that's supposed to be the role model of toughness. So I can't talk to nobody about this. But in that summer, I'm watching my life just spiral downwards. And I'm depressed. I'm sad every day. I don't know why. I'm just like, you know what? I'm not living the life that I want to live, but I can't do nothing about it. And I have no real outlet, and I have nobody to talk to. So I'm watching my life just kind of spiral downward. And it wasn't until November where I started drinking to cope with it. So I'm drinking every day. I'm drinking. And then it kind of hit me. It was the week of November 13th. And I remember calling in to work and saying, yo, I'm not coming in today. And I just drunk. And for 3 days, I stayed in the house drinking. And then I had 2 friends reach out to me, 2 women. They're probably watching now. Kelsey and Sherry, they reached out to me and they said, you need to see somebody. You got to talk to somebody, because this isn't like you. And, this isn't like you. You need to talk to somebody. And I was, no, that's not how I handle business. I don't handle business by talking about it. I punch somebody in the mouth before I talk about it, but that doesn't work. So, a series of events led to me, being extremely low. And I had to. I said, all right, if I don't do something, and I started having thoughts of, the world doesn't really need me. The world doesn't need me. And then I'm putting scenarios in my head of, if I wasn't here, would my son be okay? My son be okay. He'll survive. He don't really need me. I was having these thoughts. And then that's when it really hit me that I had to go talk to somebody. So then I started seeing a therapist. And that was extremely helpful, seeing a therapist and just kind of unpacking, you know, all the things that happened, the maybe traumatic experiences that happened in my life that I never was able to deal with, that started to just unravel through life. So then I started, and then I said, you know what, self-care is something else that I need to do. I need to start taking care of myself. I need to open up to people, maybe, because I've never done that before. It was always, when things happen, you close off, don't let nobody see it, and then violence, more violence. So I said, all right, so I created this network of friends that maybe not understand what I was going through, but just were compassionate to what I was going through, maybe. And then when you realize that when you're looking for people, there are more people like you that have the same issues that you're having than you realize. So I created a network that first thing I do in the morning, wake up, start texting all my people in my network, just to, so I have that little sense of community. Then I started meeting more people. Then I got into bike riding, and I'm not really a bike rider. I just, like Theo said earlier, movement is the key, So I said, I'm gonna start riding a bike. And I live in Florida, and I told myself I want to ride my bike from the East Coast of Florida to the West Coast of Florida for a charity. And I didn't know what charity I was going to do. So then I reached out to a friend who was in the mental health industry. And this is when I started really understanding that, mental health is something that's important. It's just as important as physical health, because, I was on the verge of damaging myself physically because mentally I wasn't able to deal with it. So I asked a friend of mine who happens to be Canadian, and she said, there's this group called HeadsUpGuys that deals with men's mental health. Maybe reach out to them. So I just sent them an email like, hey, listen, I'm doing this ride and I want to give you guys the money. And since I did that, HeadsUpGuys has been nothing but just true gentlemen to me, and very supportive. And I'm totally digging the whole thing. Like I'm a big fan of everything that's going on that HeadsUpGuys is doing, and I'm here to stay. And I know how easy it is for me to fall back. So, and that was one thing that I noticed. Like, once you start doing good, you start thinking, oh, I got this, I'm straight. But it's so easy to fall back. So you got to stay on top of it. So that's why I'm here to stay. So I'm here to stay, do my Heads Up Guys, and I'm here to stay, and I'm just proud to be a part of this.
Well, we're very very happy to have you, and thank you so much for sharing that. That was really inspirational, and I'm really happy to hear that you connected with Heads Up Guys and that you guys have such a good relationship. Did you find initially, when you decided to reach out and get help with the therapist, did you find that there were other people in your industry that maybe were resistant to that, or what was their reaction to you doing that?
Well, most of them don't really. I haven't really been open about that until now, actually. So this is my first time really expressing openly that I wasn't hiding it, but I've never really expressed it openly that I do see a therapist once a week. So this is my first time really expressing that. But I can tell you right now, about 90% of the people I know in my industry would be helped by a therapist, because they're all similar. They all have these same struggles, and they're going through it. And you see it every so often where, some MMA guy does something crazy, and that's just the result of not having a better outlet, or the know-all to reach out and talk to somebody. So I'm glad that Heads Up Guys is here, and I'm working with some other guys now, maybe to put some programs together for fighters to be able to reach out to people and have better resources and better outlets to express themselves.
Well, again, thank you very much for sharing. We're honored to have your voice here today, to see that side of that perspective. Obviously, it's something that we all kind of think about, manly men, toughness, that kind of thing. And like you said, you're right in there with that industry. So we're very happy to have your perspective. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to move on to our next panelist, Eddy Hernandez. Eddy currently works at EA as a capture specialist. He is on the youth committee at Anxiety Canada, focusing on raising awareness for various anxiety disorders that affect young people. Eddy, now more than ever, people are struggling with feelings of loneliness and experiencing anxiety due to COVID-19. In your opinion, what are the ways we can engage with our community to foster connection and overcome anxiety in this time? What are some things that have worked for you?
I just wanted to start off by saying thank you to everyone for attending this. I think this is something that I really like to see because, I've been really, through my experiences, I've never really been in a situation where everyone comes forward and shares their experiences and what they've gone through in terms of mental health. So I feel like this is a really unique experience for me, just being in a space where, I feel completely comfortable sharing what I'm going through. But in terms of, ways we can engage with our community, COVID kind of threw everything on its head. It's a really unprecedented situation, and the uncertainty for the future is like crazy. So for me personally, I think that the one thing you can do is just try to keep in touch with as many people as possible. Constantly checking in on your friends, using all of the tools that we have at our disposal, such as Zoom, Facebook, Instagram, all of these things to kind of keep in touch with the people that you really value. Because for me personally, before COVID started, a big way that I, managed my anxiety and helped cope was through, speaking with my friends, just hanging out, having fun. And so once COVID, kind of made that more difficult, I found that the only way for me to get that was, hit people up on Facebook or send them a text message to see how they're doing. And for me, that's really helpful because, that's as best I can do right now. And then another big thing that I found that's been really useful for me is just I try to find a lot of things that are great distractions to help keep my mind off of all the things that are going on around the world. Just kind of release a lot of the energy that I have pent up because we're just stuck in our rooms all day. We don't really have much of a release. We can't really go outside or anything. So I think it's really important to find distractions. And for me personally, the two distractions that I find most valuable are actually exercise and video games. So for me personally, one of the reasons why I work at EA is because I'm really passionate about video games and a lot of the kind of opportunities that you have for socialization and just distraction that these give you. So, just by like saving an hour or two a day to get online and play Call of Duty or Madden with with my friends or my brother, I find that that's really useful because it takes my mind off of everything that's going on. And I find that by just unwinding and, getting a little bit of time to myself and to be present, I'm really able to, calm down a little bit and deal with my emotions a little bit better. And then obviously exercise is really important for me because you get that endorphin release, you feel good about yourself. Like Dean said, he like at biking, that's really cool too. And so like I like going to work out in my building gym. It's actually really nice. And, I get an hour a day just getting in there, get a little sweat going. And then, that makes me feel really good. And then lastly, another thing that's really helped me is finding something that I'm really passionate about and that I can contribute to. And so Anxiety Canada was that for me. So, when COVID started, I was kind of trying to find a way to really, give back to the community and find something that I'm passionate about that I can really see myself, devoting a lot of time to. And luckily, one of my old bosses, she knew the executive director for Anxiety Canada. And so she put me in touch. And so, I really like being involved in Anxiety Canada because it enables me to speak about what I went through in terms of my own anxiety. And it helps me, feel like I'm contributing to something bigger than myself. And so that's just kind of a good release where I meet a lot of other people that have very similar experiences and values to myself. And so, I kind of found a sense of community within Anxiety Canada. And that just gives me something to look forward to every day. Like we have a meeting once a month. I really love having those meetings because we just check in on each other. We brainstorm ideas for new events. And, we just try to support each other and try to get the word out that, mental health is nothing to be ashamed of. We should all be open to talking about these sort of things. And I just really like, being part of that and contributing to spreading awareness. So yeah, that's kind of how I've been dealing with my anxiety during COVID.
Well, thank you for sharing. I think that I definitely have my own ways to deal with anxiety as well. And I think that, no way is really a bad way as long as it's, helping you out. I do have a question. So through like college or even high school, in your opinion, what was the time in your life in which you kind of felt as though anxiety was, the most impactful for yourself or for the people around you?
For me personally, in my experience, both high school and college were both in terms of where my anxiety was really impactful. In high school is when I really started struggling. So that's when my symptoms really, started to come on strong. And, as a high school kid, you're never really exposed to mental health and anxiety. And so you don't really know what's going on in your life when, you start getting these feelings. And so in high school is a really big struggle for me because, I was constantly anxious and I didn't really know what the root cause of it was. And then that was kind of when social media was really starting to become more prevalent. And so, by going on Instagram, going on Facebook, seeing that all of these people were having fun and they seemed so happy while I was kind of stuck in my room with my anxious feelings, it, definitely made me feel really isolated. And I was kind of ashamed of, being anxious. And then leading into college and university, you get exposed to a wide variety of different people from all over the world. And it was more of the same where, I wasn't really comfortable sharing my story. Like I only told a couple of people when I was in SIG and when I was at UBC about what I was going through. And so it was really tough to go through all that time, kind of feel like you're hiding what you're going through from other people. And so, after I graduated from UBC, that's when I really started to feel like it was, it was better for me to just really put my story out there, stop hiding behind this kind of image that I had put for myself, and just be open about what I'm going through. And so like, I'm glad that I had those experiences in high school and throughout university because it kind of helped me, be comfortable with who I am and, be like enables me to share my story and tell other people what exactly I've gone through. So, yeah.
What do you think is the reason why, young kids or just youth, young adults in particular, why do you think that age group has such a tendency to hide those feelings? Just kind of like what you were saying. Why do you think it sometimes takes for you to be a lot older before you start to actually take on those feelings?
Well, yeah, because like I feel like young adults, the youth especially, they're really afraid. They're really afraid of being judged, and they kind of want to uphold that image of being cool. And so, by having these feelings of anxiety, depression, mental health, they're afraid of, being judged for what they are going through. And I feel like once you get older and you start to really realize that, you're truly happiest when you're just being yourself and you're open about your experiences, that's when you can, really start to share your story. And so I think that, we need to raise awareness, especially the youth, which is one of the big reasons what Anxiety Canada and what the Youth Committee does is to, raise awareness and really start to educate the younger people about how, going through these mental health issues is completely normal and a lot of people are going through it. And there's not really a point of hiding what you're going through because, by sharing your story, you never know, you could touch another person who's going through the exact same thing as you. And then that can help them deal with their issues as well, right? So I think that, by tearing apart that stigma of like, you're not cool if you're anxious, you're not cool if you're depressed, or, you're not going to be judged for coming forward with these issues, I think that that's where we can start to make a difference.
Well, I appreciate your input, Eddy. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Appreciate it.
All right. Our next panelist is Conor Larock. Conor is the CEO of one of the most sought-after marketing firms in Canada, SocialRise. He has also published best-selling books and hosts a TV series called Life on the Rocks. Conor, what has been your biggest mental obstacle as an entrepreneur building a successful business?
Well, first and foremost, everybody, I want to raise the energy in the room a little bit. So give Aiden a huge round of applause. I know we're all zooming in here, so it's hard to get that energy up. But big shout out, obviously, right off the bat to Sigma Chi UBC. Heads up, guys. First and foremost, I just want to start this off before we get it rolling in, is that I think it's important for everyone to know that you guys matter. that it may be hard a lot of the time where people get this idea that you can't come out and talk to people about your problems because of kind of that old school mentality that, oh, you have to be tough, you have to be this person. But the true reality and nature of our lives is that when we let these feelings out and these emotions, you grow and evolve. And what I found over the last several years is that every single one of us is going through some type of struggle or a problem or something. So the first thing I'm going to ask is, how many people in this room, as much as we can't see, have struggled with their mental health at some point? How many people have a hard time getting out of bed in the morning? You have those thoughts that race through your head, maybe doubts and uncertainties and things that you're thinking about that maybe you're not enough. But what I'm here to tell you today is that you are enough, and that every single one of you, although I can't see you all, should have raised your hand, because at some point there's going to be some struggle or something that hits you that's going to bring you down. And the true essence and nature of our lives comes down to this. My philosophy is simple. When somebody falls, we pick them up. And I want to repeat that again. When somebody falls, we pick them up. And even if they're not vocal about it, you have to do your best within your character as a person and a human being to go out there and be great to people. We get caught in this stigma as men and as people that in society we have to create this character. We have to be this straight up military instructor, shake a hand, and this is how it is. And what I found in my life to make myself successful is just be yourself. Just like Eddy said, you have to go out and use that energy. And it comes down to the same thing in business, that people have this idea. Well, at the end of the day, business is built on relationships and people. And as a human civilization, it's one of those things where we get into these cultures that are not so much abusive, but toxic, where you have to have this mentality where it's like, well, he's not a man because he wants to talk about his feelings. But the true essence, you look at some of the top superstars and icons and people out in the world that have evolved and understand and are compassionate are the ones that come out and start talking about their problems. So just like everybody here in this room today, one of the things I do that I find is really good, I'm always connecting with my friends. We're joking around, saying stupid things, and it's a decompressor. And when it comes to business, if you're not having fun in business, in a sense where you're going to work every day, dragging your feet, you're not feeling good, you're not truly successful because it's not that fulfillment. So the question I ask everybody is that, are you willing to sacrifice a short-term pain or a short-term comfort for a long-term pleasure? And it's hard because all of us, we may be going through certain situations. Maybe something hits you, somebody passes away, you're witnessing stuff. Maybe you've had a harder upbringing. But what I'm here to tell you is that you may not be able to control your external environment, but what I've learned is you control your attitude, perception, and mindset on any given situation. And it's important. And the realization is that we're all going through this struggle. There's days I wake up, I'm kicking my feet. But the sad reality in our culture and society is that we are conditioned that when the person walks up, they're walking into work and I'm sitting there and they're like, Conor, you must have ADHD. I'm going up, I got all this energy. I'm like, hey guys, how you doing? What's going on? People look funny. They're like, is that guy on drugs? What's wrong with him? And then you have the other person in society that walks into work dragging their feet. How you doing today? I feel like crap. The Tony Robbins example, where they walk in and then everyone relates to that. And I find that's a problem because what that shows right off the bat is everyone's operating at this lower level of energy, when the true reality is that we have to be comfortable within our own bodies to be our own being, because there is no manual to this brain and this body and this feeling. And it really comes down at the end of the day when you walk up to someone and you put your hand on their shoulder and say, hey, well, COVID, now you got to give them the elbow, but you put your hand on their shoulder and say, hey, how are you feeling today? Are you doing okay? And the same thing with our business. What's made our business successful is relationships. At the end of the day, we deliver on our tasks, but we're there for our people, our staff. And I believe as a hiring standpoint, we hire based on character and train the rest. If somebody's there and they're struggling, I want my team member to walk over to them and say, hey, are you okay today? Pull them aside. Let's have a chat. Let's go for a walk. And I think our culture needs to shift. What doesn't matter where you are in the world, it has to shift to that mentality that, guys, we're all human beings. We all have a brain, body, bleed, and breathe. At the end of the day, we all struggle. And it's that opening sense where you just create that energy where people see and say, hey, I'm having a bad day. And I say, dude, I had a bad day yesterday. And you accept that and you realize that everybody's in the same seat. And the more support and compassion and empathy we express to everybody and welcome them in and try to be natural with it, I think that's one of the best options just to help people grow and evolve. So to answer your question, I know I went on a tangent on purpose, but to answer your full question, when it comes to business, in that sense, it's really down to the relationships and creating a culture that welcomes people. No one wants to do business with somebody that's sitting there and you're like, who's the kind of jerk in the room? You point out it's like the top salesperson, like, okay, no one wants to do business with companies like that. They're like the best company where it's just, they don't care about you. You try to call Facebook, you can't get through, and they're like one of the biggest companies in the world, but they don't care. They make so much money, it doesn't matter. You want to have companies that welcome you in. Doesn't matter if you're a small client, big client, whatever. What makes our company successful, whether we're doing with a large business or a small, it just comes down to how you treat people. Treat them how you want to feel. And really, we have to open up as a culture that it's not feminine or it's not, you know, wrong to be able to say, yeah, I'm having a bad day. I really need to talk to somebody. And really, at the end of the day, who cares what anybody thinks about that? If they're like, well, you know, that's wrong as a man. We have to get out of this ideology in our brain that just this, somebody's going to judge me, because at the end of the day, it's going to save lives, and you're going to be there. And so I want everyone in this room right now, and I want you to say from the bottom of my heart that I know I'm just some random dude zooming in from Sudbury, Ontario, from, no one probably knows what that is, but I'm zooming in from there, but that I'm there for you if you ever need to call me. And it's that mentality. Call me at 3 in the morning. We'll pick up the phone and answer. And whenever someone falls, we pick them up. So that's the mentality we need to go forward with in the future, I believe, as everybody, a more open approach, and just bring them in. Hey, how you doing? And that kind of fun mentality instead of this old school military instructor idea. It just doesn't work. You got to let it out, let it flow through you, and bring that energy up and move and follow what fires you up. I find that's very important.
So is there a particular instance or example, you know, in the business world, in your experience, in which you noticed that, you know, people were being forced or being pressured to conform to a particular stereotype about, you know, what it means to be a man, what is masculinity, that kind of thing? Do you have any experiences that you have to share?
I find in the corporate world and in general, just in business with men, it's like sometimes it's a boys club, and I feel bad. Like, so some of the girls we work with that are executives and do really well are some of the best in the world. And there's this ideology in business that you have to be this person. You go to the boss and bow down. And it's never been something in my career that I've been able to do, because I just want to be personable and nice. And you obviously have a line where you have to draw, but there's been multiple instances where if you don't conform, all of a sudden you could lose a contract because you're not bowing down, but you're saying, hey, I just want to work with you. This looks better. But if it's their way or the highway, and that seems to be the mentality with the old school business types in general, where if you don't conform to it, you're out the door. You could be the highest producer in a company, but it's like, well, this is the way it is. I'm the boss. We don't open it up. So again, it comes down to culture, and the cultures. I look right away when you go into a workforce. You know, when you walk into that room, if the person at the front desk has a really good energy, if it's a good culture, good vibe, you'll know right away. And then you know companies where all of a sudden there's people talking behind your back, and those are the toxic cultures. So a lot of places, it's the ones that say, I'm the boss. This is the way it has to be. There's one time you can have fun and business at the same time. People don't think you can do that anymore, but it was like years ago, I met Jack Welch. He was the former CEO of General Electric. God rest his soul. I met him at an event in New York City, and again, big company, General Electric. And he said, you want to create a culture and environment where it's a fun place. It's like a party, right? Where at least people are doing work, but they're happy to represent the brand, the company, and what they do. Whereas I've walked into several companies, whether it's a car dealership or insurance business, and you're walking in and people are on eggshells and they're tight. And then all of a sudden that creates massive anxiety. You hate your job, and then you go home and you have a bad day. Your wife's had a bad day, things like that all compound. So it's that old school mentality we need to get out of, the military instructor. It's got to be done this way. And we have to open up a more welcoming, warm culture that people feel like they can do, that they can come out and speak out and say, hey, I have a problem. And my whole team back home, I make sure that everybody knows, hey, you know, if you need a day off or something like this, like get the work done, we'll do it good and have a couple laughs. But really it's more welcoming and opening. And in the end of it, those people are going to work harder for you. They're going to want to represent your company and things like that, instead of just a big business where you're a number kind of thing, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. And with what John was saying, how, you know, recently there's been so much more people reaching out for help. And Theo was saying that February is the worst month for those kind of things. Do you find that with COVID and, you know, with the time of year that we're in, do you see any sort of shift with the way that people are behaving, or, you know, how they're down, how they're dragging their feet, that kind of thing? Has there been any sort of change?
Let me ask you a question. Do you think it's a coincidence that narcissism is rising and so is the depression rate, or that your anxiety is at an all-time high, but yet our cell phone usage is? And that's the problem. We're all stuck on this phone, and then you're looking at people in Mexico and Cabo and all over the world, and then you're locked up in your house. Specifically in Canada, you know, we have a lot of problems with that, and there's been a massive shift. And February has always been a month for the February blues. And here, like I'm from Sudbury, it's like -30 out, so it's freezing. You're trying to go to work, your car's frozen. You know, you stub your toe outside, it's freezing off. But really, realistically, there is a big shift. COVID has really showed us that we're going to take hits. This one's hit everybody, and you watch businesses having to close their doors, and then you can go to Costco still. It just doesn't make sense. But the biggest thing for everybody at this point, it's really showed that change is coming, and at some point it's kind of a metaphor for the rest of your life that you can either sit in that moment or embrace that change and say, you know what, this really sucks. Let's talk to people. So biggest thing for COVID is I've tried to stay around my friends, and we joke around and we send stupid videos and have fun like that. But it's hard. Like there's days I wake up and I have a lot of energy, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking out the window and I'm like, well, I don't feel like going to work today. I feel like crap. And then, you know, you have to go move and direct a team or whatever it is. Even as a normal person, just can't even go to the store. So then, you know, it's the psyche, and then the phone's on, and it's a lot of different variables, but it's definitely been harder. But it comes down to trying to have a discipline to condition yourself. So the exercise, go from a hot shower to a cold shower for 30 seconds to a minute. And then just prime that muscle in your brain. Just keep priming it and trying to instill the positives as best as you can. And that's the best thing you can do. And it's hard. There is days though, you're sitting there and, you know, the best thing to do is try to find somebody you can talk to, and don't be embarrassed about it. I mean, we're people, they probably, you never know what's going on in people's lives. Right. So it's always good to talk about it.
Well, I appreciate your words, Conor, and trying to, you know, raise the mood at the beginning there. We are really happy to have you. Thank you for all the digital work you've been doing for us. And wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
I'm going to make a donation after this too, guys, and anything that we can do for the Heads Up guys and the Sigma Chi BC, I would encourage everybody here as best as you can. If you're able to make a donation and support a cause like this, it's very important. And again, anyone ever has any problems, feel free to reach out. We're always here. So thank you, Aiden, honestly, and thank you, Sigma Chi BC Heads Up guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Conor. All right, we are now happy to introduce Theo Fleury, an NHL All-Star, Stanley Cup champion, Olympic gold medalist, best-selling author, and mental health advocate. Theo, we are grateful to have you here to share your thoughts and perspectives on men's mental health. Theo, you have spent your career working towards the destigmatization of the shame associated with trauma by encouraging relationships, conversation, and a holistic approach to mental health. How did you overcome your own challenges? And what would be your biggest advice to young and older men struggling with trauma and their mental health? I think you're muted, Theo.
Thanks, Aiden, and thanks to Heads Up Guys for asking me to speak. You know, over the last almost 13 years, I live in this space 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I always like to acknowledge when there's courage in the room. And in the whole time I've been doing this, I don't think I've done a whole evening like this with 109 men that are all here. So all of you logged in, all of you that are on the panel, thanks for your courage and thanks for your support of this initiative. You know, I grew up in the suck it up era, right? I grew up in the suck it up era where, you know, we weren't allowed to talk about, you know, sadness or loneliness or any of that stuff. And you know, having experienced a lot of trauma as a child and as an adolescent, you know, really what is mental illness? Mental illness is emotional pain. It's suppressed emotional pain, and we cannot see emotional pain. You know, when we break our arm, you can see it. When you know, all these things. And so, and because of the stigma attached to, you know, mental illness and, you know, this macho sort of mentality that we've, you know, sort of grown up in. And that's the space that I grew up in. And, you know, in 2003, after a very, very successful hockey career, my mental illness took me out of the game, and I lost my job as a direct result of my mental illness, which was disguised as an addiction. Okay. And, you know, the reason why I went to the addiction side was, you know, the addiction actually saved my life. You know, the drugs, the alcohol, all those things actually saved my life, because I was in so much pain for so long. You know, I think my earliest memory is like at 5 years old, and I'm in the middle of, you know, a huge brawl between my parents, you know, and at the time I didn't realize that that was, you know, my first experience with trauma, you know, and then being raped 150 times by my coach, you know, and not being able to talk about it. You know, you're only as sick as your secrets, right? And for the majority of my life, I was carrying around a secret, and I was sick physically, spiritually, and emotionally. I was sick because I couldn't talk about what happened to me and what was going on in my life. And, you know, 16 years ago, I had a fully loaded pistol in my mouth, ready to pull the trigger and end my life, not because I wanted to die, but because I was completely exhausted from living in emotional pain and suffering. And, you know, I had bouts of severe depression, anxiety. You know, I live in high anxiety all the time. And, you know, that high anxiety, you know, I end up having panic attacks and all that. And, you know, in 2009, when I wrote Playing with Fire, my autobiography, was the very first time I talked about it. And I can tell you, I was absolutely shitting in my pants before that book came out, because I had no idea how all of you were going to react to what was in the book. And, you know, at the very first book signing, this guy approached the table who had my book, and he looked homeless. His hair was greasy, his sweatpants were ripped, his t-shirt was dirty. And he put the book on the front of on the table, and he looked me in the eye, and he said 2 words. He said, "Me too." He said, "Me too." And that absolutely changed my life forever. And what happened after that is I got completely run over by people. Everywhere I went, 5, 10, 15, 20 people were coming up to me at every book signing and saying, "Hey man, you told my story. Me too." And, you know, I was getting guys in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80-year-old men were seeking me out because I was a safe place. And there was going to be no judgment. There was only going to be compassion and empathy and a hug at the end of it. And, you know, I watched guys in a matter of a 5-minute meeting absolutely shed all of the shame that they've been carrying around for the majority of their lives. And so, you know, I am incredibly grateful because I had the courage and I was vulnerable. And what it did is it created a really safe space in society for the opportunity for people to talk about, you know, their deepest, darkest secrets, whatever that may be. And that's so important when it comes to men, you know, is, you know, when I was able to be vulnerable, that's when I had the greatest impact on people, was when I talked about my own stuff, right? And I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't, you know, I wasn't afraid. You know, I just sort of stepped out into the spotlight and trusted in, you know, in God, Allah, Buddha, Jehovah, whatever the hell you want to call that thing that gives you some faith and some belief. You know, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I didn't want to die. I didn't want to die. And because of that, you know, we've created this unbelievable space on the planet where, you know, I've heard every single story you can possibly imagine. You know, I work in the prison system. I work with inmates and you know, all that stuff. And I just make myself available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because I know how hard, you know, it took me 27 years to talk about my sexual abuse, 27 years to talk about it. And when I was able to release it, you know, the world just really opened up for me. And, you know, and I stepped right into my purpose, you know, the real reason why I was put on this earth, and the real reason why I went through all the, you know, all those struggles at the beginning, right? And, you know, for everybody that's here, if you struggle with mental illness, guess what? You're in the majority. You're not in the minority. You're in the majority. And the biggest epidemic on the planet is mental illness. It's not COVID-19, it's mental illness. It's trauma, it's mental illness, and it's addiction, right? Those are the three biggest things on the planet. And, you know, I want to eliminate pain and suffering on this planet because I think it's unnecessary, you know? And once we get rid of all this macho bullshit that we've been living with our whole entire lives, that's when it's going to change. That's when it's going to change. That's when we're going to destroy the stigma, is when, you know, you know, I'm the toughest son of a bitch that ever walked the face of the earth, but I need to be vulnerable, and I need to talk about my feelings, and I need to cry, and I need to express my emotions, because if I don't, I'm in big, big time trouble. Big time trouble. Because I start thinking about suicide, because I have depression. That's a natural part of being depressed, is your brain doesn't work properly. It doesn't work properly. And you're gonna think about it. You know, I still think about it. I spent $1 million on therapy. I've done 10,000 hours of therapy, and I still have depression, and I still have anxiety, you know, but I've learned to deal with it. You know, I pick up the phone, I call people, I work with other people who are struggling, you know, these kind of things. And I, like I said, I live in the space. I live in the space. And, you know, like the stigma's got to go. Like it's got to go, right? You know, we're losing too many people. You know, we're losing too many people, unnecessary, you know? And, you know, we have all these mental health campaigns, you know, 1 in 5, 1 in 4. Like, why are we shaming the one person who has mental illness? Why are we shaming them? When in fact, in reality, it's 5 in 5. It's all of us. And if we're going to tackle the biggest issue on the planet, it needs all of us. It needs all of us, right? And so, you know, I'm very blessed to, you know, do the work that I get to do, and I get to meet the people that I get to meet. And you know, people say, you know, like, what do you do for a living? And I say, I collect people. That's what I do. I collect people. That's what I do. And I give them the love and the support and the, you know, and the understanding that, you know what, man, you ain't alone. And, you know, the 104 guys that are left here, you know what, you're never alone, man. You're never alone. You know, there's always somebody that's willing to listen, you know, and if the first person doesn't pick up the phone, call the next one. And if that one's busy, call the next one, you know, because you have to be tenacious when it comes to mental illness, you know, is, you know, don't get to that place, you know, don't get to that place, because, you know, there's hotlines, there's, you know, there's support out there, you know, and we're fully aware that this is the biggest issue on the planet right now. We're incredibly aware. But on the other side of the coin, we have the highest suicide rates in the history of our planet. So why isn't all this awareness being turned into getting people well? Well, we got stigma, and the stigma's got to go. It's got to go. There's no place for judgment. There's no place for any of that, you know, stuff. And like Conor said, it needs compassion, it needs empathy, and it needs relationship, right? It needs relationship, you know. I call myself an expert in relational trauma, right? My trauma happened in relationship. How am I going to heal the trauma? In relationship, right? You know, isolation, all those things, that ain't going to work. It's going to just take you deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper down that hole. And yeah, so absolutely incredibly grateful to be with all of you, and you know, continued success with the charity. And you know, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, and to have 104 men talking about mental health fills, you know, my heart is full tonight. My heart is full because you know, I never thought I would see this, you know, and you know, this is an important thing, and you guys are doing absolutely incredible work, and you know, I'm just pumped that you know, that there's a group like you guys out there. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Theo. We're at Sigma Chi, and I'm sure I can speak for John as well, are incredibly honored to have you speak with us today. Fantastic messages. Yeah, just thank you very, very much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
All right. Before we move over to our Q&A, we're going to finish off with 2 members from Sigma Chi's top 6 leadership team. Zach Abelson is a 3rd-year student studying commerce at UBC's Sauder School of Business. Niko Andrianos is a 3rd-year integrated engineering student also studying at UBC. Zach, can you talk about any experiences in your life in which you or a family member felt pressured to conform to a particular gender stereotype like masculinity? How does this tie into what you believe is the true meaning of masculinity, of what it means to be a man?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, I just want to thank Aiden and everyone at Sigma Chi and the fellow people who I'm speaking with today. Also, thank you to the 100 people who have attended. I know I was looking through and there's a few people who I recognize, also a few women who have joined us today. So thank you for all the support. So a lot of my story is kind of to do with the LGBTQ plus community. My brother is actually transgender. So when he was 13, he began the transition from my sister Jenna to my brother Jason. And a lot of that experience kind of was manageable with my whole family, thanks to being able to speak openly with each other. So we went through the whole process as a family. My brother, as he went from Jenna to Jason, he stayed in the same school. And the whole thing that kept us all going throughout this process and it all running smoothly was that we were able to openly speak and communicate with each other, with the school, with the therapists and everyone involved. So I think, as everyone else here today has said, the thing that makes mental health manageable and allows us to work through our struggles and our lowest lows and kind of get back to a place where we're more comfortable within ourselves is that opportunity to speak with each other. And I think where that kind of ties into masculinity, as Jason, my now brother, kind of moved through that whole process, he definitely was, we as a whole family were kind of enlightened to the general stereotypes that come from the LGBT plus community and the stigmas that also come with people who are interacting with them. So often, and I'm just generalizing here, not everyone of course, but people who are in the LGBT plus community sometimes express themselves through the way they speak or the clothes that they wear or the posts they have. And often there's such a stigma that before people have actually listened to people's stories and kind of learned to understand them, they've already prejudged them and they've decided that this person is gay or call them other words. And it's definitely that stigma that kind of prevents people from being themselves. And I think what masculinity is and what healthy masculinity in particular is being comfortable within yourself to express your story. As Theo said, it took him many, many years to kind of get to a place where he felt comfortable to express that who he really was and what he had experienced. And I think from seeing my brother go through the whole transition and me experiencing it myself and being in a fraternity, people often speak before they've even thought about the words that are coming out their mouths. And I think it's that fear that stops people from opening up about themselves. And so I think having a healthy masculinity is being comfortable within yourself and not saying that it's okay for people to speak back at you, but being comfortable enough to be prepared to have and be ready for people to maybe attack you, but being in a place where you have a support system that can get you through that whole process.
I completely agree, Zach. And thank you very much for sharing that. I know that we all kind of have our own definition or meaning of what masculinity is, like what it means to be a man. And I think, you know, your example is a perfect way to describe that. You know, if you feel like this is the right way to be a man, then that's the right way to be a man for you, right? And that's what I believe is the meaning of masculinity. And it sounds like you would agree. So thank you very much for sharing. We're going to move on to Niko. So my question to you, Niko, is what do you think is the biggest challenge that young men face when reaching out for help in our generation?
Thanks, Aiden. Just before I start, I just want to say thank you to all the panelists and all the guests. It's truly an honor to speak amongst all these panelists. I really appreciate everyone's kind of thoughts and opinions and stories. So it really means a lot. Thank you. Now, what do I think the biggest challenge is when reaching out? I definitely think it's who. You know, like a lot of the times we're more concerned with kind of maintaining our self-image of being this kind of macho guy, right? Or this strong guy, or, you know, who's the biggest guy in the room kind of thing, right? But I honestly think that the most important challenge to kind of overcome is, you know, who can we open up to, and finding that person that you can really connect to and, you know, be vulnerable with, and, you know, be able to talk about yourself with no shame or no embarrassment. In an ideal world, we could do this with anyone, right? And that's what we want to strive towards. But I think at this time, and perhaps at your comfort level, finding that one person, for me, that was kind of tough to find. I mean, in high school, I was lucky enough, I kind of connected with one of my high school counselors, and, you know, we were really good and we were able to make some progress together. And, you know, as I'm transitioning more into my early adult years, definitely connecting with my father at more deep level, that's kind of always helped me kind of get over that challenge and finding that person to connect with. So, you know, whenever people ask me, like, how do you find that person? I always suggest find the person you're most comfortable with, because who you find that you can open up to is usually that person that, you know, you're willing to share more and kind of make some more progress, right?
I agree. I think that having that one person is such an important part, because even if you are in a position in which you're going to open up, if you're not with somebody who you trust, or if it's not the right person to do it with, it might not be as effective as you'd like. Mm-hmm. My next question is, what is the biggest issue that must be overcome to break that stigma that we've been talking about, that Theo mentioned? You know, like stigma is the biggest part that's now blocking all this awareness. So what do you think is the one biggest issue that we can, you know, work towards fighting to break that stigma?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you referencing Theo there. I got to reference Theo again, what he said. It's like, just keep calling the next person, right? The first person doesn't pick up, call the second person. Like, I couldn't agree more with that. Like, there'll be times when I'll share a quick anecdote. Like, I remember a few times, you know, there's some days I just wouldn't even want to get out of bed, right? I just couldn't move. And I'm like, what am I doing, man? Like, why am I here? What do I need to do? Just call someone, you know, just call your friend. If they don't pick up, next friend, family member. And that's kind of go down the list and have no shame in doing it, because it starts with us, right? To break that stigma. Each and every one of us can check in with that person and just say, hey, how you doing today? You know, take a genuine interest in someone's life, right? Or what they're doing and their feelings. I think once we make those conversations more normal and easy to digest, it'll just become normal, you know, to speak about these issues, and we can all get over this kind of stigma of, you know, let me be the toughest guy, or who's the most macho guy, right? And, you know, it's not really our fault, I think. You know, just think about all the action movies we watched growing up. Tough guys like Rambo and, you know, Dom Toretto from like Fast and Furious, right? Like, these guys are these stone cold, emotionless, jacked guys who can do anything, right? They're fighting these a million villains, you know, one on 100, right? And you see that and you want to emulate that, right? You want to be that stone cold, emotionless guy. But in reality, if we didn't have these kind of emotions, you know, what would make us human? So just as Theo said, you know, calling that next person, call everyone, check in on everyone, take that genuine interest in people. I think that's how we're going to overcome this stigma that's kind of been built up by society.
Thank you very much, Niko. Zach, Niko, I really appreciate you guys joining us, and, you know, giving the student the student perspective on all this, especially from Sigma Chi. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Aiden. It's an absolute honor. And shout out to all the panelists too. You guys are absolute legends, all of you guys. So I really appreciate it.
So with that, that's going to conclude the panelist presentations portion of the event. So I'm now going to open the floor for questions and begin our Q&A. So you can use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen to direct your questions, and we'll try to do our best to evenly distribute it across the whole panel. Please also write the name of the panelist you are asking a question to. So you can say, for example, Theo - your question. If your question is directed towards the entire panel, you can just write all or for everybody, and we'll know to do that. All right, so it looks like we have a question from Manville Wong. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. So Dan, why don't you take this one? So it says, what are your thoughts on Gen Y/Z? They're on their screens all the time, and I noticed that masculine energy dropped a lot. It seems like they're going through psychological struggles too. How can we help them?
I gotta unmute. You know, I think that has a lot to do with people being available in the present, because a lot of times people will not be available because everybody's on the phone. Like, everybody's looking down. So then no one's available to each other. They're only available to each other on the phone. So I think what we need to do is we need to be available to each other in real life. And you have to open, it's going to take, you know, whoever it is to start it. I mean, I guess it's a tough thing to start, but whoever is to start it has to start it. But you just have to be available to each other, because, you know, we find comfort in just being able to reach out to people in the palm of our hand. And it's a little more comfortable, and it's easier to deal with rejection in that way as opposed to like in real life. So we have to be able to get comfortable with being more available to each other in real life.
Thank you for your
Can I just jump in real quick?
Yeah, of course.
So when we're on our phones, our parasympathetic nervous system gets turned on. And the longer we stay on that, in that place by staring at screens and phones and all that stuff, when it's time for us to go to bed, it's still turned on. And so even though you're sleeping, your brain's not getting into the right kind of sleep, right? And the only time the brain repairs itself is when we're sleeping and when we're in that REM state. And if we can actually get into a deeper sleep, then our brains actually start to repair the cells and create new neural pathways and all that stuff. So sleep is incredibly important, you know, when we're struggling with mental illness. And so the longer we stare at our screens, the less likely we're going to have the opportunity to get the proper sleep where our brains are actually going to start repairing themselves. And, you know, when our brains are tired, you know, it creates more junk and it creates more gunk in our brain, and that stuff starts to build up. And so it creates more anxiety, creates more depression, all that stuff. So sleep is like the #1 thing, because I know when I don't get enough sleep at night, my mental health really, really, you know, struggles when I don't sleep. So try, you know, a couple hours before you're getting ready to go to bed, try to turn your phone off so that you can get into that, you know, very restful sleep, and that sleep that actually repairs, you know, the brain and clears out all of the junk from the day before.
Thank you. We have a question for John from an anonymous attendee. Anonymous attendee asks, do you believe that the work being done by universities is sufficient, and how can we move forward in the direction on college campuses around the world?
Presuming the question's about, are we doing enough for mental health on campus? And that's a hard question to answer clearly. In some ways, there's a lot of resources being put toward supporting mental health of students, staff, and faculty on campus. But at the same time, it's not enough. And often what happens is that the resources that are being put out there are often very disjointed. I can't tell you how many times I've had people literally, well, this is pre-COVID, literally come to my door asking for help on campus. Students, and I've said, have you gone to student health? No, what's that? Well, have you gone to student counseling? Well, I tried that and didn't really like it, and I honestly didn't know where to go, so I found you online. And there are so many different resources out there, but often they're operating in silos. And so without purposeful integration of these, we're never going to be quite doing our job well enough. And so I know, for example, there's a group of students here on the campus of UBC. They're called Project Aurora. And so what they're doing is that they're creating a website that pulls all the resources together. So it's kind of one-stop shopping so that people can see what is available. Because that's often one of the most difficult things when you are needing to reach out for help. And it's like, where the hell do I even find that help?
Eddy, we have a question from Maddie Fleming. Maddie asks, what prevented you from being more open with your mental health struggles while you were in Sigma Chi? And what advice do you have for the active chapter to allow for a more open dialogue for those potentially struggling right now?
So for me personally, one of the biggest kind of barriers that I experienced when dealing with mental health issues while in SIG was just the lack of discourse around our own mental health. Like for me personally, I didn't think that we talked about what we were going through enough. And so this created the kind of illusion for me, like no one's really going through these kind of things. So I don't want to come forward and be the first guy to talk about this, because then I would feel singled out and kind of, be a bit self-conscious. And so my advice for the active chapter is to just, be open about what you're going through, talk to the guy who lives next door, talk to the guys that are in the meal plan, just start the conversation about mental health, how your day went, how you're feeling, and share tips for potentially, like if a guy says, I was feeling really anxious today. She's like, oh, this is something that's really helped me when I'm anxious, And so just making it seem like that you're not the only one going through these kind of things, I think would be that's like kind of the first step in getting more people comfortable speaking about what they're going through and to seek help. So that's just kind of my advice.
Connor, we have a question for you from another anonymous attendee. They ask, you stated that when someone falls, we pick them up. I was wondering if you, as a charismatic and positive person, what are steps and or methods that you take to pick yourself up when you may be the one falling?
So one of the first things that comes down to perspective. My big mentality when it comes to things is that when you get into that state, you fall. You just don't stay there. So one of the first things I would do is you try to get around somebody that has a little bit of energy or somebody that can maybe put something in perspective for you. I'm a big believer in kind of the mentality when you look in, you try to take your life, and I use an example. The book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor L. Frankl is an incredible book about a gentleman that went through the Holocaust, and through it, what kept him alive was the belief that his wife was still alive through the Holocaust. And it turns out she had passed away during that time. So I try to put myself into kind of those extreme situations to realize that we're all going through struggle, and that a lot of people in our lives have it worse than ourselves. I'm a big believer, as much as it may sound hokey pokey, in discipline in terms of, using the right positive affirmations and techniques and things and instilling those into my brain and trying to, and a big thing, I'm a big proponent of Tony Robbins. So when you hit into that state, you have to change your state. So you engage your physiology. So your body, engage it and breathe and try to put yourself back into those moments when you're okay. So you take the breathing exercise and you try to think of those thoughts and then get around maybe. So for me, sometimes it's just my dad. I need to call him. But if let's say you don't have a father or something, maybe a brother or a family member, a friend, just somebody where you can just let it out and then shift and say you're never going to stay there. Things like, if you're going to look in 3 months, you won't be in that same situation as long as you start kind of moving. That in these moments, they seem very significant. But down the line, if you take the right steps, try to instill those positives and get around the right people and just talk it out, it really helps. This quote, it sounds really funny and it's hokey. But one thing for me is network, right? It comes down to the people around you. So show me your friends. I'll show you your future in a lot of ways, so that if you're around the wrong people, that sometimes they may be negative or, into drugs and alcohol and things like that, that if you get into that cycle, it can pull you down. So you try to find the really positive people that can kind of bring you up and pull you out of that situation. So that's some of the things I do. So the motivational stuff, the positive affirmation, conditioning, and really when you're in those states, go into your mind and think of a time in your life, think of something you're very grateful for. And that helps you kind of step out of it for a second and then call somebody and shift. Like, you got to get that shift and shock your brain for a second and try to just work with it and discipline and build it like a muscle. And I find that that's effective. Another one too is if you fall really hard, take a cold shower, snap you out of it for a second. It'll change your brain. Like it's hard, but some of those little things that it just takes a tweak, and things like that. And then try to do that every day and then get around those people, because it's going to come back if you don't work it, if you don't condition it. So that would be my advice. So try to get around the right people, breathing exercises, try to go inside your mind. If that doesn't work, you got to get someone that's got that energy that can kind of, like a guy like me, that pull you up. But I have days too. Don't get me wrong. I have some days there I wake up and I need someone to get me back into the right state. But you like Theo said, sleep. Like I'm the type of guy, if I don't sleep more than 7-8 hours, like I'm miserable. And not literally, but I need it. And it's where the energy comes from. And yeah, it's that kind of stuff is important, but that would be my advice.
Thank you.
No problem.
We have a question for Din, but I think this could kind of be answered by both Din and Theo, because both athletics. They ask, can you talk about mental health supports for athletes? Din, you mentioned starting programming for fighters. What is needed most for them?
Well, I can't speak on all fighters, but I can speak from a perspective or all athletes, but I can speak on a perspective from fighters. And there is no program or anything for support for fighters. In fact, it's the exact opposite, because it is such a violent world and a cutthroat world where, it's an adverse effect on their mental health. And which is why I want to start something to give them some positive outlooks. Like Conor just said, networks are the most important thing. And that was what got me through my hard times, was having those networks and just being able to reach out to somebody. And fighters don't have that, because again, it's such a individualized sport and it's such a closed sport where you have to be the toughest, where you can't reach out to anybody. So I want to be able to open up that door and those opportunities for fighters to be able to have somebody to talk to. So like, that's my step now. That's my next step. So my first step was my bike ride. My next step is opening up some opportunities for fighters to go when they're having these issues. So we don't have, just recently there was a story where a gentleman right here in South Florida, where I live, where he stabbed his 2 sisters, and he said it was from his mental health. And they were like, yeah, he's been going through something. So that's a situation. So we gotta be able to deal with this.
We should all connect. John, Dean, all of us in this room, we should connect and help you build out a program. Our team back home could do all the marketing for it and the programming, whatever you need on that. And then we could build it out. If you ever looking for an outlet and we build that resource network, I'd be more than happy. I'm sure everybody here, same thing. I just wanted to let you know if that was something, on your mind, I think that'd be awesome. I just want to let you know.
Perfect.
I can jump in a little bit about that. I do quite a bit of work with athletes, either at university level, professional and national level athletes, and often, it's more and more common for there to be sports psychs associated with different teams, and while they play a role, it's often not the thing that's going to actually help people perform. because if you're dealing with shit off the ice or off the field or outside of the ring, it's going to impact your performance. And fundamentally, it's dealing with all the crap that we're harboring inside and finding a therapist to help you with that, because you take care of that stuff and you're just going to be more available and engaged in your sport, whether it's a paid sport or otherwise. So it is really important, if you are feeling that, you know, I'm not achieving what's expected of me or what I'm expecting of myself as an athlete, you know, reach out to a professional, a therapist, and really work at what's going on behind the scenes and not necessarily what's not manifesting on the ice, and tweaking some of those things. There's only so much visualization and deep breathing, for example, that you can do. And, you know, it's limited.
We're just going to do a few more questions here. Theo, this one's directed towards yourself. If mental health is something you know you struggle with, but haven't addressed in your life because you don't know where to start, what is a good first step? I think you're muted. Yeah.
The day I asked for help was the day I saved my own life. You know, and it was one of the scariest steps that I ever took in my life, because like I said, you know, I grew up, I arrived in the NHL in 1989 and I left in 2002. And in that whole entire time, not one person talked about mental illness. Right. And so, and like I said, you know, I was a millisecond away from pulling the trigger on the gun and ending my life. Okay. And, right at the moment of truth, when it was time to end my life, you know, this little voice said in my head, you never quit anything in your life, why you quit now? And that allowed me to take the gun and throw it into the desert. And I had two choices. Was I going to die or was I going to live? Well, I chose to live. But guess what? I have no idea how to live life on life's terms. All I know how to do is cope. That's it. You know, whether I'm happy, sad, mad, glad, whatever it is, all I knew was a feeling and I knew how to make it go away. And when I got sober, 5,645 days ago, I got sober. And, I sat in my shit for a long time, but it was part of the process, because I was able to identify when I was happy, when I was angry, when I was lonely, when I was sad. You know, that was part of the process. And, you know, thank God there was a bunch of people around me who allowed me to talk about negative feelings. I don't say I'm fine anymore. I say I'm sad, I'm lonely, I'm frustrated, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, right? Because that's the true answer of how I'm actually feeling. And that's that vulnerability that creates safety, right? When we're vulnerable, it creates safety. And then when safety's in the room, that's when the magic of healing happens, is when we feel safe, right? And we all have the ability to be vulnerable. And we all have the ability to create that safe space and that safe environment for somebody who's struggling, right? And sounds like to me that the majority of the people who are sitting on this panel have experienced struggles in their life. So the person who's telling us they're sad, we know what that feels like. You know, we've all felt lonely. We've all felt isolated, you know, all of these things. And so, you know, just tell the truth, right? You know, they say, if you tell a lie, the lie has to last the rest of your life if you tell a lie. But eventually you're going to get caught, right? Because you can't keep your story straight. So why not just be honest right off the bat, instead of sugarcoating and you know, not being true to yourself, right? Because this all comes down to self, right? Because when my abuser left my life, guess what happened? I took over the abuse and I abused myself until I came to that place where, you know, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I had to make changes, right? And that means people, places, and things, right? I got to change people, places, and things. And I got to create a new group of people who are vulnerable, who are honest, who are open, who are willing, you know. Together we can move mountains. But by yourself, you're gonna run out of gas, right? You know, I played on some of the greatest teams in the history of this game. And the guys that led those teams were guys who were vulnerable, guys that made everybody feel they were important. From the guy that made the coffee to Wayne Gretzky, every guy mattered. And in this space, every human life, every person who has mental illness, your life matters to me. Your life matters to me because I know what it's like to be in that dark hole and having to make that decision, you know. And thank God when I asked for help, there was another hand there that grabbed me by the hand and said, you know what? Yeah, we're going to do this together, you know, because you can't do this alone. And you cannot outthink mental illness. You can't outthink it. You need external brains to help you get through what you need to get through, right? Because this brain doesn't work. My brain doesn't work very well. So I need external brains, other people to insert their knowledge, their passion, their compassion, empathy, all those things. I need those people in my life. And those are the people that are part of my tribe now, right? And if you go out and find your tribe, you're going to be okay. You're going to do amazing things because this is manageable. Like it's manageable. And yeah. So
Thank you very much, Theo.
Yeah.
We're gonna do one last question. It's directed towards Zach. Question is, what can women do to support the men in their lives and be advocates for men's mental health?
Yeah, Maya, thank you very much for that question. I think the first thing to do is to be there and attend conversations like this. I think the fact that there's women in this room right now who are listening to our stories and are here looking at ways they can help is that first step that really is in a long chain of steps, but it's that first step that really gets the whole ball rolling. I think also opening up the conversation when there's a guy in a group, he may not be the person who wants to open up that tough conversation. But if you're a woman in a group of guys who feels that maybe it's your place where you can actually begin that conversation and create a safe space for them to open up, I think that's also an incredible opportunity that you can provide for the guys around you. It's definitely not going to be an easy conversation necessarily, but it at least breaks the stigma of guys being fearful of speaking and opening up around women. I think there's kind of a double-edged sword. Number one, guys are scared to speak about their feelings around other guys, but also when they speak about it around women, they think that they're weak or they think they're a simp or something like that. So I think being able to start that conversation and show that it's okay is really going to make an incredible impact on their lives.
Thank you very much, Zach. And I agree. Thank you to all the women who've joined us today. Me and John have talked about this at length, but you know, men's mental health is not just something that affects men, right? You have siblings, you have fathers, brothers. You know, it's something that we're all in this together. So thank you all for joining us. For the rest of the questions that we didn't have time to answer, I have recorded them all down, and I'm gonna pass the questions along to the panelists. If they have the time to answer them after the fact, we will get them recorded and we'll post the responses in our event page, which is just titled "Breaking the Silence Around Men's Mental Health." So if your question didn't get answered live, just keep an eye out on there. We might have a chance to post those for you. And with that, we are going to conclude the panel. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you all being here very, very much. Again, a huge thank you to our speakers, to UBC Medicine, Manifest Wellness, and of course, Heads Up Guys. Your support has been immense, and we could not have achieved any of this without all of you. We will now put the donation link into the chat below. Any and all donations are appreciated to helping support Heads Up Guys and to continue these amazing resources. Thanks again for joining us today, and have a wonderful rest of your Thursday evening.
Thanks, Aiden, and thanks everyone else. It's left me breathless, honestly. Everyone sharing in this kind of way. It's a really unique experience, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. Honestly, really appreciate it, and let's all stay in connection. Anyone needs anything ever, feel free to reach out via email, anything like that. I'd be more than happy on our side. Anything I could ever do. It's thank you very much for everything, Aiden too. Good job. I wanted to get a little bit more rowdy at the beginning there, though. Get everyone going, but you can't see anybody. So that's my favorite when I go on there, get everybody going. But that's a great job. Great job on the event. This is let's start doing more of these.
Yeah, it was amazing. I'm honestly at a loss for words, and that often doesn't happen. But
yeah, thanks for having me. Anything I can do moving forward, please involve me. And I dedicated the rest of my life to solving the problem of mental illness, and so I'm all in. And if you need me at any time, just let me know.
Thank you very much, Theo.
we absolutely will, and I think we all understand we're all better together.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. It's really amazing to see people from all these different backgrounds, right? We have like athletes, all the way to entrepreneurs, right? Like, and students, professors. Just hearing how everyone has such similar experiences. I mean, this is really, it leaves me speechless too, John. I couldn't agree more.
Right. Well, let's take that good feeling and all have a very good sleep tonight. I'm a little jittery right now because it's hit me so hard, but I think I'm going to have a good sleep.
100%.
do some self-care tonight.
I will. All right. Have a good night, everyone. And Ben, I know it's very late for you. Thanks for tuning in.
Don't worry.
It's very gracious of you.
Thank
And
you,
for all
guys.
of
I
you.
appreciate you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much, John and Din.
Okay.
Take care, guys.
Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah,
Great job, everybody. Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.